What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Another episode of Chiefs Focus Live here with JP, Caleb, and Quentin. What's up, fellas?
Doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah,
We're here.
we're here. The Royals are bad, so living
Cheap
another
tickets.
Can't change that.
That's what I'm happy
can,
for.
but, I was just saying off there, they're going to have those 2 for $20 things, and they won't. Like Quentin said, they probably won't have free parking, but they will have the two for $20s pretty quick. So
No, because it's more expensive for me to leave my car in the parking lot than it is for me to go watch the professional baseball team.
That's a fair point.
That's pretty actually terrible thing to think about. Really.
Yeah, I know.
No matter how you look at it. So, we're going to go over the 2018 draft class. What we're going to do.
Beach's first year drafting.
We can just talk about how good he's done since, and we can talk about how crappy that was. It was a shitty draft. There's no doubt. But we can also talk about how great he's done since then, and that's the big thing. If we can do that, then we're okay. Wouldn't you guys say? So, who wants to kick it off?
Go ahead, Quinn.
I've got it in front of me, so we can just go ahead. I mean, we can just get this started. This was one of the drafts that he didn't have a ton of picks. He only had the 4, which is just weird how it's like he's been gradually increasing the amount of picks that he's gotten every year.
Yep.
So that year he didn't have that first overall pick because that was the year after the Patrick Mahomes pick, so that first round pick belonged to Buffalo. But with the 46th pick overall in the NFL draft, that'd be round 2. The Kansas City Chiefs selected Breeland Speaks, defensive end out of Ole Miss.
Sorry, I had to gag a little. That was a terrible pick. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It was a terrible pick. I mean, what can we say about that? It didn't work out.
Yeah, it didn't work out for a lot of reasons. Number one, we had probably one of the worst defenses of NFL history with Bob Sutton, so we'll probably hear that name many times tonight. What we saw was Breeland Speaks. I think he was good, but the defense that the Chiefs had him in during that season and then the next season changed. I think went from a 3-4 to a 4-3, so his position really wasn't needed, and due to the depth that was already there at the line, they're like, we're just going to move on. So it was like a second-round pick. He did his thing a little bit. I remember him specifically because he had Tom Brady tackle for a sack. Tom Brady pushed him off, ran in the end zone, 5-yard touchdown. That has never happened, but to the only team is the Chiefs. It was a Chiefs-like year. There were great moments. There were terrible moments, and that was one moment I was like, bruh, you had Tom Brady. I would have put my all into sacking him. I would put my all into sacking any of these guys, and it just happened, unfortunately. And that was a big problem there. And I think what it came down to was they thought basically kind of best available, kind of Veach's philosophy, best available. And it just came to a point where the Chiefs kind of had pretty much already were locked and ready to go. But yeah, we will hear Bob Sutton's name probably a lot tonight.
Filthy name. Filthy, dirty name.
Yeah.
I will say this. He was look, Breeland Speaks wasn't even a good backup. I mean, he wasn't even good at depth. I'm sorry, but look, there was somebody that missed the boat. Somebody was smoking a fatty. They were drunk. I don't know what it was, but he did not belong where he got.
I think it was best available, and that's why the Chiefs took him. That's why I feel personally. I mean, I don't remember his combine stats from that time period. I thought it was going to work a little bit. We saw some flashes, but what it came down to is the guys that the Chiefs had were far above where Breeland Speaks was at. He ended up getting cut, went to the Cowboys, and is he out of the league now?
Yeah, he's done. Yeah,
Quentin, do you know by any chance? I think he's out of the league.
I don't have him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's done.
Look, if you look at the roster at the time, if you look at the Chiefs roster, if you look at the roster, the Chiefs had no pass rush.
They didn't.
So, I mean, you had Ben Neiman as like your starting linebacker, who lasted longer in the NFL than Breeland Speaks did, just to show you how bad that defense was. Really, it's really impressive. I mean, you go back and you look at that roster, and you're like, damn, this team made and hosted the AFC Championship game.
Exactly, that's the crazy thing. Mm-hmm.
Did you hear this shit? Hold up. What's this, Reset?
Oh, here we
It's
go.
the lighting, man. It's the lighting, okay? I'm old. What do you want? God, terrible, man. The fans I have.
I mean, you had Justin Houston, right? Who is one of, he's a top 5 pass rusher in Kansas City Chiefs history. Probably 5. And Chris Jones, who wasn't the Chris Jones we know now, right? He was still early in his career, but there was no significant threat on defense. I mean, anybody and everybody could pass on this defense. It was just a bad team heading into the year, and so you're trying to draft pass rush. So I could sort of see the justification for trying and getting him. But you're just looking at his career, and he only played for Kansas City. He was in all 16 games. He started 4 of them, but was not a good NFL player, and that's just the way that it is.
Yeah, and you don't see that often. I mean, you don't see it where they don't fit in any system. But
I mean, I thought he could have done some things, but he just really struggled. And what we saw because of that, the Chiefs were comfortable moving on from him, and he hasn't done anything since. So I don't know what he's doing. But from what I'm looking at, he played 1 season with the Chiefs, 16 games, 1.5 sacks, 15 solo tackles, 1 forced fumble, and from it looks like that is all that it wrote. That is all that was there. So
yeah, I agree. It was a bad pick. I mean, there's no way around it. I don't even understand.
I think he did some stuff in college that kind of boosted his draft stock a little bit. I don't know what was going on there, but that's kind of what we see it's happening. So,
well, right now I just don't understand the hate I'm getting from Reset. I mean, damn. It's just rough right now. And I mean, look, man, fine. I'll just dye everything I got. What do you want me to do? We can go over that later too. What's he saying? He said, so what's the priorities for the Chiefs the first and second round of this year's draft? Well, we're going to get into that here in a little bit. Right now, we're going over every Thursday. I know you've been missing a couple Reset because I don't know you're sleeping or whatever, but we've been going over the draft classes every Thursday night because, Veach's draft classes, I should say, just because we can. And then we get into some other stuff after that. This wasn't like a monster draft class, so it won't take us too long.
Yeah.
Who's the next one, Quentin?
So once again, we've got round 3, pick 75 overall. We've got defensive tackle Derek Nottie.
Go ahead, JP.
You know what? I can't complain about Nottie. He's had his issues, but Caleb must have fell off. He'll come back. But as far as a player's, I mean, he's had his injury issues, I guess I should say, but I think he was a good player. I don't know about you, but I think he was a good player. I think he's still a good player. What's your opinion, Quentin?
I think Derek Nottie is the perfect 3rd round pick, right? He's not a guy that when I draft, I'm not depending on him, right? I don't expect him to come into the team and be a day 1 starter, but he's a top 100 pick, and he's productive for your team, right? Even from it when he first got here, he was a good rotational piece, has been a good rotational piece. I think Derek Nottie is sort of this is my expectation for top 100 3rd round picks. This is what I want. I want you to be a contributor on the team. I'm not expecting you to come in and be a Hall of Famer, to be the best at your position, or even to be a day 1 starter for your organization. But I'm expecting you to come in and be a guy that I can depend on, when you get on the field, especially at a position like defensive tackle, where the expectation is you're going to rotate. The expectation is there's going to be other guys that are going to come in and play snaps for you, right? No defensive tackle is playing 100% of the snaps. Derek Nottie is the perfect 3rd round pick.
He is. I can't complain. What do you think, Caleb?
I'm going to have to do some ultimate back away from this. I feel like Derek Nottie has done some stuff, but it's kind of been a little bit, in my opinion, lackluster. I know Veach drafted him because of Florida State. He can play in every part of the defensive line. But I haven't seen that, quote-unquote, till this last season. I understand they brought him back on a 1-year deal, but I kind of expect a little bit more out of him. I don't know if it's the size or what it is, but I feel like overall and over time, we've had guys that have outperformed who have been in the system shorter. So I understand it was either between him or Saunders, and obviously he's the cheaper of the two options. But I feel like there could have been some times where things could have been elevated. It just finally felt like sometimes he was there and it wasn't really helping. That's
well, not he was injured too. So
yeah, and I do agree with you there. It was a good pick. I see why to help what along the defense line. I'm pretty sure this whole draft class is all defense besides pretty much all defense. So
yeah,
it worked, but I just feel like it was kind of like a rotational piece that I felt like really didn't jump in until the contract year. When we see the contract year is undefeated.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel. I don't think he's a bad player. Hopefully he can come to his own, but I just wonder if we're going to see that same, not decline, but same.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think he'll be all right. I think he'll be okay. I mean, they see something in him, or they wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think he's terrible. I just expected a little bit more and maybe that could be due to the contract year, but we have Joe Cohen as the defense line coach, so that could be another thing too.
Yeah. Reset says we need someone like the Bosa brothers. Well, here's the thing, Reset. There's very few Bosa brothers out there.
Defensive pass rusher.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to grab. Just it kind of is what it is. But who's next on the list, Quentin?
Okay, at pick 100, and also in the third round, outside linebacker Dorian O'Daniel.
This draft's going to be some memories.
This is...
I have a lot to say about a lot of stuff, so you might hear a rant Caleb tonight.
Yeah. Look, I personally like Dorian O'Daniel. I think he was a great player. I think he was very underutilized. I think they should have put him in a lot more to see what they could have gotten out of him. But I think he's a good player. He just never got the opportunity, in my opinion. I just don't think he got the right opportunities. I mean, he was a special teams guy. I mean, he was this, he was that, but he was never on the field where he was supposed to be. And I think that hurt him in the long run. What do you guys think?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. He never got an opportunity. When you have one of the worst defenses in NFL history, and this defense was, I think, worse than the Chiefs defense that had 13 sacks in a season. I kid you not. He did not get the opportunity. In that season, there were two good defensive players. One of them was Chris Jones. The other guy was Dorian O'Daniel. And then the third guy was, say, Ron Parker, kind of. But Dorian O'Daniel was consistent. I was at the game when I know it wasn't Traymon Smith. It was Terrence Smith was the linebacker in front of him. Terrence Smith got hurt in a special teams play towards ACL. Dorian O'Daniel came out there and laid the wood. Knocked some guys out that game. Against the Bengals, I kid you not, when Andy Dalton was there. And did great things all that season. All that season, he was very consistent. He didn't play in the AFC Championship game because he got hurt. But from a receiver standpoint happening through the season, he did very, very well. Then we see Spags come in. And then he's not getting an opportunity to be, quote-unquote, your rover. You're going to let Ben Neiman take his spot? Are you kidding me?
He got paid more. That's how they look at it. Who's being paid?
Here's the thing, though. I understand, but here's something else that came about. He's not tall enough. Okay, you know what? Bob Sanders was not tall enough as a safety player for the Colts, but he can lay some hits. I do believe he should have had an opportunity to have some more defensive snaps and be the rover. It's like when Spags came, he's like, we have him. He's a special team guy. He's not going to get the chance. And when he did get a chance, he did some stuff, but it was few and far between. And because of that, he's not in the NFL. And I just feel like it was disservice. He was originally supposed to be drafted to be Dirty Dan's replacement. Hybrid linebacker safety. Didn't get much of an opportunity. And I feel like that is on the coaching staff who did not do that. For some reason, they felt like Dirty Dan was a better option.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's another example of a special teams guy. And look, special teams is important. We talked about this yesterday, right? There are guys that are just career special teams players, and it ends up being your fourth safeties and your fifth corner, your sixth wide receiver, right? These are guys that end up playing special teams for most of their career, and you need those guys. Special teams truly is a third part of the game that gets forgotten. Just ask the Green Bay Packers what happens when you have shitty special teams play, right? You lose playoff games because of that.
Yeah.
So
we actually saw some of it to a degree on our side too. So,
but they lost. It was the game against the 49ers, I guess 2 years ago now. That they outplayed him on pretty much every mark except special teams. And with the block punt and bad coverage, you end up losing games.
Mm-hmm. And I understand, but I just feel like when you had that youth movement happening with the team, you need him to be the rover. I mean, sorry, not the spy on Josh Allen. He's fast enough. He can lay some hits. But I guess Spags was not seeing it that way. What does he say? Finally got the right.
Wait, hold up now. Look here, Cooper. You sent me 2, and one of them was really bad. I mean, and you know what? Suck it, Cooper. You're not much. You're bald.
I think we need that debate.
I still got my hair. I mean, come on, man. You're not that much younger than me. And not only that, you sent me 2 thumbnails, and one of them is really bad. I mean, really bad. By the way, I need you to hook me up with something later. Anyway, moving on.
He said the blame game.
Let's
move on. Next pick. We'll say, Cooper, come on, debate us. We will do that cheese ball.
Come on, man. You need to come on the show. You're sitting here listening, but you could pop in at any time. You know you got the login. Anyway,
go ahead.
I feel like the next pick is like the exact same pick, and Caleb's just going to recycle everything that he just said. With pick 124, with pick 124 in the 4th round, safety Armani Watts.
Absolutely. Let's just say this: ditto. I'm going to say the exact same thing.
Something different to say about Armani Watts.
I don't have anything different because Armani Watts never got the opportunity to play, and when he did, he had some great moments. He had a couple of not so great moments, but when you're not on the field and you don't have the opportunity to play, you're going to have those not so great moments. I do think that he got too much into the anime crap and he played too many video games. I don't know. There's people out there that like anime. That's all on you. But when you're reciting it on Twitter and you're putting up anime emojis and all that stuff instead of worrying about the game plan, that may have gotten a little bit too old too. But I still think he was a good player. I'm not going to say he was a bust because he wasn't a bust. He was look, I'm kind of a nerd guy. I love you, Armani. Don't get me wrong, but you're kind of a nerd. And him and I have talked back and forth on Twitter a bunch, and he was always pretty cool about stuff. So
I remember him and Darren Lee would go back and forth when Star Wars first came out. So.
Yeah.
That's cool. Here's my whole debacle with this. Whew, how do I start off with this? So Armani, when I first started being interactive on Twitter, I remember seeing, I think it was an Arrowhead Pride article, and Armani Watts was one of these guys that they were like, the Chiefs should possibly go after. Well, lo and behold, the Chiefs drafted him. And when you watch this man's highlight tape, this guy was a miniature Eric Berry, laying hits, getting interceptions, doing his thing. In preseason, he got a couple of interceptions. He had a little slow start to the season. Against the Jaguars, when the Jaguars said they were the greatness after losing the AFC Championship game, the Chiefs went in, just went pop, 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 and beat them up. Kareem Hunt ran all over them. The Chiefs destroyed them. I think Armani Watts, there was one specific play. He jumped in front of the tight end, blocked the ball, and fell, and I don't know if he tore something. I'm not really for sure what happened, but he was hurt for the rest of the season, I believe.
Yeah.
We see what happens later. He comes back in. We draft new players. He doesn't get an opportunity. When he does get an opportunity, many years later, last year against the Bills, he didn't have it. He got burned. And I do think that was due to not having the opportunity to go out there in these games when the Chiefs were kind of kicking teams. But I think there's a lot of untapped potential there. And I felt like he could have had a chance to do something in our system. I mean, he kind of reminds me of Brian Cooks a little bit. Brian Cooks was a little obviously underrated coming out of college. Armani Watts was a good 4th-round pick. I just expected a lot more. Yeah. And what I saw him do, I thought Spags would take him and use him. But what we saw, the same thing. We got other guys. It didn't work out. He becomes a special teamer. And then he ends up with the Colts. Now, I don't know how his season in there went, but that's just another guy where it's like that was basically another special teams pick in the 4th round, which I thought we were going to have a impact player because the way I saw him, what Veach is doing now, he can hit on guys in the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and even the 7th. They're starters. But that first season, I think just due to the regime change and everything that happened, it just didn't work out.
What's your
Go ahead, JP. No, I was going to say, what's your opinion, Quentin?
Okay, Armani Watts, Look, we're to the point in the draft, and I made this point last week, right? You're in the plus 100 pick. I don't know if you can really say a guy like Armani Watts is a bust, quote unquote, because, you're talking about literally 123 other guys went in front of him. So I just don't know if you can really call him a bust. You're right, Caleb. I do think that Armani Watts, to me, probably could have been used better and used more. I think what's unfortunate for a guy like Armani Watts is that he was drafted in a time of transition for the Chiefs defense. And so when a new guy comes in and tries to implement his system, a new system, and then, that draft, that off season that he comes in, he's going to find his guys, his kind of players. It's his draft going in when they're drafting a bunch of defensive players. So I think Armani Watts just sort of got left out of everything. Now, we are talking about Super Bowl champion Armani Watts here. So
that is true.
I think that this is another guy where it's a special teams guy. Look, he was on the roster. He actually went out his entire rookie contract with Kansas City, unlike some of the players that we've talked about today, like Breland Speaks, who was on the team for literally a year. So he's productive, right? I mean, he was here. He made an impact on the team, on special teams. He was a participant in multiple games. You are right about his injury. I wonder if that had something to do with it. It's him trying to recover from an injury. Then you get the new defensive coordinator, and it's like, can we trust this guy to come back? Is he going to be the same guy? And, you just sort of plan around Armani Watts instead of having him included in the plan. So I wonder if that has something to do with it. I think it was just sort of a combination of a lot of things that sort of didn't allow him to get the opportunity that he probably should have. And he just sort of got pushed to the side here in Kansas City. But special teams player with the 124th overall pick, played all 4 seasons here, and nobody has a problem with him. That's a good pick to me. That's a solid pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't complain about the guy. I mean, I like the way he played. And you know what? That kind of goes into when you really think about it, like Thornhill. Spags almost has that mentality that once they're injured, if it's a certain injury, it's almost like he doesn't want to bring him back. He doesn't trust him enough to bring him back on the field and play. You know what I mean? He did that with Thornhill for a little bit. Then it became a problem within the locker room. It became a problem with coaching staff. And not just with Thornhill, but with, 2 other players. You had Baker and you had the Badger. The Badger wanted him out there. Over Dirty Dan. And who wouldn't? Okay.
I mean, we're looking and he's on, what's it called? Just looked at, he was on IR this past season with the Colts, so I don't know what's going on there. But like I said, transition is probably what got him, unfortunately. And what we'll see is that with some of these players on the list, that's kind of an unfortunate issue, because I think what we saw, Veach's goal was to literally fix that defense.
Yeah, I agree.
So, what's the next person, Quentin?
Okay, so then now this one is weird because he is drafted as a wide receiver, but he was played at defensive back.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, in the 6th round, so they didn't have a 5th round pick that year.
Yep.
In the 6th round with pick 196, wide receiver / defensive back Tremon Smith.
JP, you know a lot.
You know what? I'm going to let you go first on this one, Caleb, and then I'm just going to go afterwards. I'll have my little say afterwards.
All right. So when Tremon Smith got the opportunity to play with Charvarius Ward, if you guys remember, against the Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson, they just threw all over the Chiefs. That was a time we saw they were like, we're done with Orlando Scandrick. We're done with, I forgot who the other guy was, some guy that was with the team that got cut, a good player for like the Chargers. And they brought the youth movement. And they did some stuff, but Tremon Smith was struggling. And then I think after that next season, during camp, they made him go to running back. And you could tell that that cornerback room was too full and he wasn't in the plans. They tried him at running back. It didn't work. He went to the Packers. He did some things that didn't work. He went down to Texans, and he's actually had a decent career. With the Chiefs, I have to say this pick was a bust. And the reason why is because it just did not work out with the Chiefs specifically. And again, that transition period. They were just throwing the guys out there in the youth movement. We got Mahomes for winning, but let's see what these other guys could do. Because that defense could not stop a nosebleed. I mean, Russell Wilson was doing crazy things, throwing these touchdowns. Mahomes would lead him back, and the defense would let him down. And, yeah, I think Traymon Smith isn't a bad player, but due to all the things that are happening with Bob's son and then transition, they're like, yeah, he's not going to work in the system. I mean, shout to him. He came from, I think, University of Central Arkansas. I think the Grizzly Bears, right. Something like that. Yeah. He did his thing, and he's doing great with the Texans because I saw he just got a contract extension with them. But with the Chiefs, it just didn't work.
Bob Sutton was his nemesis. I'm sorry, but he was. Bob Sutton did not utilize that man correctly. He didn't have anybody to teach him how to play the position in the NFL, and it was his demise in Kansas City. I'm sorry, but it was. That's how that fell. Bob Sutton sucked. It was his fault. I put all the blame on him. And as you just said, he's got a decent career somewhere else. Mm-hmm. He's got a good contract. He's making money. He's still in the NFL. You know what? If he'd have stayed with the Chiefs another year, he wouldn't have been in the NFL any longer.
I mean, I see kind of what was going on. I understand there were some issues there, but I felt as if it just didn't work out. And when we had the new regime, they moved him to running back. I remember seeing the little Twitter video of him walking down the hill with number 20, and then it didn't work out. Now, wasn't there something, JP, him not having a good attitude? I remember when we were doing this. Is that true? I remember something that was said.
It was true, but the attitude came from he didn't have a good attitude, and there was a lot of locker room issues. There was issues on the field, as we know. Practice field, I should say. But I think a lot of that had to do with how he was treated by Sutton. I put the blame on Sutton when it comes to that. Now, he came out of college with kind of a
chip on his shoulder.
He did
some things. I mean, he was great in the return game. I mean, if you guys remember against the Patriots, when the Chiefs lost by that field goal at the end, Breeden Speaks did not get the sack. He almost had a kickoff return for a touchdown. So, I mean, he had some great tools. It just wasn't utilized and, upgraded. Quentin, what do you think?
Look, I mean, the guy, he's a super athletic guy, right? You don't make the all-rookie team as a return specialist. You don't get converted from a wide receiver, defensive back to a running back. You don't go through that much of a struggle to get the guy on the field, with him just being an average NFL athlete. Guy's a stud in terms of an athlete. Coming from a small school, it makes sense that he went a little bit later. He's at 5'11", like a $190, so a little bit smaller. That's probably one of the reasons why he slid in the draft to begin with. Mm-hmm. But man, it's unfortunate that you see a guy. It would have been great to see him if he would have come out of the draft hypothetically a year later and he came to Kansas City. It'd have been interesting to see what he could have done under this. I think you guys sort of hinted on it. Mm-hmm. He sort of falls under the same problem that Armani Watts did, where he's on the team for a year, immediately went into a transition year. And it's like, you just don't know what to do with a guy like this. The fact that he's still in the league as a late round pick shows that there's a lot of athleticism and potential there. I mean, you don't bounce around from team to team and stay in the league if you don't have a skill set. Because obviously he's proven multiple times to multiple franchises that there's something there. I mean, he started his career in Kansas City, went to Green Bay, went to Indianapolis, went to Houston, and now he's in Denver. So you don't move around that much if there's nothing that you can, if you don't have anything to prove, if you don't have any skill set to have. So
if you have nothing to give,
a team just simply doesn't pick you up anymore. They just stop. They don't show you the love. They don't sign you to a contract, even if it's to a tiny contract. You just get out of the league. So obviously there's a skill set there. This is the kind of pick that I expect teams to make when you're talking about the late 6th round, right? You're drafted at 196. This is the kind of guy you're going to find. High athleticism, small school. Not exactly sure what position he might play. He could play wide receiver. He can play defensive back, maybe running back. Return specialist, right? Everybody needs a quality returner on the kick and punt returns. we see what happens firsthand when your guy doesn't have any experience returning punts. So this is the kind of guy that you expect to draft in the 6th and 7th round. Small school, high athleticism. If you can figure out how to use him, if he works in your system, man, you're going to look like a genius. If it doesn't work, you can sort of just shrug your shoulders and say, dude, 195 people were drafted before him. I can live with the fact that this is a miss. I don't think that this is a bust because the guy stayed in the league. He has athleticism. I just don't think that I just think it was bad timing, and it just didn't work here in Kansas City. So I'm not going to sit here and say
bad timing because of the damn coach that we had.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say it was a bad pick. I just think that the timing wasn't right, and we just couldn't get him to work. But I completely endorse this pick and this sort of selection from here until the end of time. These are the kind of guys you want to find in the 6th and 7th round.
That's fair. And what you see with it as a whole, I mean, it worked. I mean, it's good for him, but the transition period has really got him. And I just remember specifically youth movement, he was just struggling, but it's like we just kind of see the older guys are just not cutting it. And it's like they lost games due to that. And I understand, and I'm glad for him that he's able to make some money he can continue to keep playing. Because a lot of guys, some on this list, have gone through injury, have been on IR, reserve list. So jumped back between the XFL, the NFL, CFL. So, I mean, that's just what we're seeing. But I'm glad he's able to make an opportunity to earn some money.
Yeah,
and this is the kind of guy with the expanded practice squad. I don't know if he's ended up on the expanded practice squad, but these are the kind of guys that the expanded practice squad is made for now, right? Guys that have a lot of athleticism, and you just keep them on a roster. Just keep them on a roster, see what you can do with them. And that's sort of the benefit of having an open veterans to be on the roster, right? Yep. Because after, if you have guys that'll just sort of age out of the league, and it's like, man, I really wish we could put him somewhere. I don't have room on my 53.
Oh, my God.
Now you can throw him on this expanded practice squad.
I want to do this so bad right now. I'm gonna. Should I do it?
Well, we're in the middle of this. Okay.
I just had to do it to mess with him. Hey, man, it's a live show. We can do what we want. Got you on camera, Coop. Anyway.
So dark.
He's a vampire. He's a vampire. He's got plugs, but he's a vampire. Anyway. Who's the next one? Was that it?
No,
there was one more.
One more. 2 picks later, out of Tennessee, the Kansas City Chiefs selected defensive tackle Colin McKenzie.
I forgot about him.
I remember him.
I just forgot.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned his name.
His jersey number is very nice.
Yeah. It is 69, for those who are asking. Quentin loves that reference.
He does. But you know what's better? 77.
For growth?
No, you get 8 more. If you really think about it.
That just flew. I don't even get it. I'm not going to just move on. I don't even get it at this point.
I know Quentin got it.
All right. So, Caleb, what are your thoughts?
Oh, well, Colin McKenzie was, I think, defensive end from Clemson. But the Chiefs were like, let's bring him on as an offensive lineman. And he did some great stuff in the preseason. He was with the team for 1 year. And the Chiefs, during that transition, were like, he's not part of it. Let's go ahead and move on. So that's what we see there. He's bounced around to several different teams. I have the list. He was on the Chiefs 2018. Then he went to the Seahawks in 2019. Then he went to the
dumbass. Thank these. Dumbass.
That was just our buddy Cooper messing around. Hold on. That's that guy right there messing around, everybody. So anybody, he logged off. He's down there messing around. He's adding some videos for us. Go ahead. Finish what you were saying, Caleb.
I was just saying he bounced around the league. That's all.
Yeah, he did. Does anybody know if he's still playing?
I have his latest. It looks like he was in the league last year with Baltimore. So, I mean, look, if there's one thing that NFL teams need. It's depth up on the line. So if you have an opportunity to get a guy that's been in the league, veteran experience, a guy that you hope you never have to use him, but if he's there, you can put him in. So there's value in just having the experience and just being able to fluctuate. A guy like this, once again, I don't want to say that he's a bust just because, the guy was picked at 198th overall. But, take a flyer on a guy and see what happens. So I'm not going to freak out about a pick like this. And I promise you that I'm not going to freak out at any of the picks the Chiefs make in the 7th round this coming year, unless they pick me. If I get drafted by Kansas City, I promise you I'll freak out. But I'm not going to give a bunch of negative, I hate this pick with the 7th round, because so many of them are flyers. I might think, I might really like what they do, but I'm not going to give a bunch of negative about any of the 7th round picks. Like I said, unless they draft Caleb or JP or something. So in which case
they draft me, they're getting a cripple.
Yeah. So
an old cripple guy. So we know
it's hard for me. Basically, it's hard for me to say that, this is a bust or I hate this pick, because it's at this point it's a flyer.
And you're right. For the most part, well, let's just put it this way. After the 2018 draft, or prior to the 2019 draft, I should say, most of your 7th round picks, your undrafted guys, even some of your 6th round picks were a flyer. They were, you're taking a chance, you're buying a lottery ticket, you're getting a scratch off, a $2 scratch off, and hoping you win your $2 back. After that, we see from 2019 on, and we can transition into this really quick. Veach has done a pretty damn good job of pulling these late round guys that have been phenomenal players. And I think that's something that everybody should give credit to Veach for, because that's very difficult to do. And we look at 31 other GMs in the league that really don't do that. They don't have that mindset. They don't have the foresight to be able to find a player in those later rounds that turned out to be a stud. It happens every once in a while. You get I can't remember who the guy was that was hanging on the fence for the Jets back in the day. It was in OTAs or in training camp, and, he was never picked up. And he ended up playing 11 years in the league. One of the best players that ever played the game. May end up in the Hall of Fame someday. I want to say he was a wide receiver. I wish I could remember who he was right now. But he was just standing there holding the fence like this, watching everybody work out. And their head coach said, "Hey, if you think you can do this, jump the fence and come on." And he climbed that 10-foot fence. And the next thing you know, he's signed within 2 days. And if you can get to that level, and be a stud, that's great. We've seen this happen over and over again with the Chiefs. And now we're seeing it with a Brock Purdy, which I know Quentin isn't a huge fan of Brock Purdy yet because he hasn't seen a whole lot of him. And the fact that he's also in a very quarterback-friendly offense. But I still think going 7-0 as Mr. Irrelevant that never thought he would see a fielder hold a clipboard in the first 3 or 4 or 5 years of his career, if he lasted that long, turned out to be somebody that, hell, they gave the ball back to him with a torn tendon in his elbow because their 4-string guy was so bad that had been in the league for 13 years or however long he's been.
Yeah, he got a concussion.
Yeah.
That's the crazy. He got a concussion.
Yeah, he ended up getting a concussion.
Mm-hmm.
So what's Corey? We got Corey Peter. I don't know who he is. The 7th round is essentially for locking up your favorite. You're absolutely right. And to some degrees, you're right. I can't argue that point.
I believe it was 2 years ago. There was a general manager, and I want to say it was Brett Veach, but I can't remember if it was Brett Veach or not. He was doing an interview, and he essentially said that in your 7th round, what you're doing is you're just looking up to do exactly that. You're just looking to draft the UDFAs that might go to another team. Yeah. That's what you're doing in the 7th round. In the 6th and 7th round, especially the later picks, you're not drafting for where you think you can play them. At that point, you're just drafting for athleticism and, who you think is there, because a lot of these guys They're guys that have played for smaller schools. They're maybe Division II guys. Like, you just aren't really sure about the competition they face, but you just look at him, he's like, man, this dude is, he's 6'5", 320 pounds. I'm sure if we work with him in a year or two, he can play a defensive tackle position, right? That's what you're doing with your later picks. Or maybe it's a running back that came out of a school with a bad offensive line, but you saw the way he was moving around. You're like, man, if we could just get him behind our offensive line, I think that there's something there. Those are the kind of guys that you're looking to draft in the 7th round, because at that point, there's so little film, there's so little information that's out on them. You probably haven't met with any of those guys beforehand, right? You just don't know a ton about them, and you're just taking flyers on these dudes. Yeah. I can't believe that the NFL draft used to be more than 7 rounds. That's crazy to me.
That's too long.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, because to me, 7 rounds is like perfect. I can't believe there was like 10 rounds. That's crazy.
Ooh,
and it went forever, man. It went forever. It was such a long, drawn-out thing.
Did teams just like skip their picks?
No, not really. I mean, they picked with what they had, and there was a lot of trading up in those. When that happened, it was just a strange time. It just drug on so long because just like everybody else, when you're watching the draft, when you get to about now, for us, it's a little bit different. Yeah, but for everybody else in the league, we're covering it, and then so you want to keep involved. And then we're also lucky as Chiefs fans because Veach draws in some badass players in the 6th and 7th round, so you kind of want to see what he's going after. Maybe somebody, Caleb is a mock draft guy, and he follows the draft constantly. He makes draft.
I do my best.
Does all this stuff, and you're great at it. Hell, one year this dude went 4 for 4.
No, well, I went 3 out of 4. These are the guys I think the Chiefs should get.
Oh, but the 4th one. Hold on now. Don't sell yourself short. I mean, you're not that tall, but don't sell yourself short.
Ha ha ha.
Zinger. You had both of those guys, and they went with one of them, and it just happened to be the opposite one that you picked.
Let me see what draft. Let me see, because keep talking. Let me see what draft class.
He likes when I talk.
No, keep talking because
keep going. Keep dragging me up.
Well, it's just
you're good at it.
There's
no doubt.
Let me look. Keep talking. I'm gonna put myself on me. I'm gonna try to find this and explain.
You do what you gotta do. He is the professor, so this man.
Nobody important, just a regular person.
Well, if the Chiefs end up picking DeJuan Jones, I'm going to be insufferable for about a week and a half. I'm just telling you.
That's more than you already are?
Yeah, I'm going to be much worse. I'm going to be very insufferable. I'm going to bring it up multiple times every show for the next 10 days.
Oh, God. What was he right about that time that he brought it up for like 7-8 shows straight?
Oh, you mean the Broncos finished last in the division? That one?
Yeah, that God, I'm still hearing about that crap.
I don't know.
I had nightmares over that.
Might be the one. I'm not sure. That the Broncos finished.
I did find what JP was talking about. So that was the 2020 draft, the COVID draft. And yes. I did say the Chiefs were going to could possibly get players like Clyde, Willie Gay, and Clyde and Willie Gay were the 2 players. I didn't think of Lucas Niang. I didn't think of L'Jarius Sneed. I was actually looking at his teammate, Amik Robertson.
That's the one where you swapped it out, yeah.
So, but, I mean, we'll see. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the smartest, but I figured out. I do have a question for you guys about this.
He's the professor.
Do we think that the quote-unquote practice squad and these drafting in the later rounds, the NFL should make the practice squad their own farm system, kind of like baseball? What are your guys' thoughts? I feel like you need to develop talent, and maybe to see what they can do in a small season of 6-7 games, practice squad can do. I don't know. I just feel like you could develop talent a little bit more in your organization if you can go that route. And if you really want to, you can trade players that have quote-unquote good farm system, can't crack a 53, and get a guy that you want. What are you guys' thoughts?
College football is the farm system.
Yeah, I understand.
My own opinion on that.
That's what college football is. Football is
I know what he's saying, though.
I would push back a little against that because if you bring all those guys, a guy from Georgia, a guy from Clemson, a guy from Tulane, the guy from Tulane might be able to outperform them on a playing field if they have that small system. I do agree that those schools, I mean, they get a lot of recognition. They're winning the championships, but you got some guys that are just dominant. I mean, you saw out of Missouri S&T, Treshawn Wharton got drafted and was doing great things in the NFL. Just imagine the Chiefs could have maybe possibly put him on the practice squad, and that practice squad would have been playing a miniature season, and they could kind of develop. I don't know. I just feel like if they could go that route, it'd be kind of more interesting to see how trades and things will work.
Here's the only thing that I will say about that, and this is when
it's going to make more money.
It would, and you know what? When you brought this up before, we've talked about
several
this on
times.
Shows a couple of years ago. What I was told by a couple of agents, one of them is Thomas' agent actually, and a couple other guys in the NFL, is that they are more concerned with injuries to these players, and then them not being able to make it to the 53, especially if they're players that are sought after players, somebody that they really see something in. So I don't think it's a matter of money, because they would make money off of it. They would make money off of it. People would. I'd pay to watch it if I had a chance to see the development of players. I would too. But from what I have been told by 3 or 4 different people, including a couple of agents, is that the NFL teams in general, owners, do not want to put players at harm's risk, and then also be responsible for those injuries. Because if you're putting a team together, a separate team together, you're still responsible for their injuries, and you have to have a medical staff take care of them, what you're paying that medical staff to do.
So I think that's a multi-billion-dollar business.
I know, but they're just not going to want to put that.
So.
What's that?
I said that they're a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they won't pay their refs as full-time employees. So,
that's going to change, though, by the way. But
I hope so, because I think it will improve the reffing here in the NFL. Here's what I'll say about this, is that the XFL has signed a deal with the NFL to where they're sort of related. The AAF is going to come back, and their season is going to be done around June. And players are going to leave that, and they're going to join the NFL like they did last time when the AAF was there. And then here in about 10, 15 years, there's going to be another European NFL league.
Yeah, it's coming.
And that is going to turn into a farm system for whether it's foreign players or guys that, they get out of the NFL, and maybe they would be 6th-round picks, 7th-round picks in the NFL, or instead what they can do is they can go play overseas in the European League, and then they play there for a couple years, and they end in the NFL as free agents.
Like they did the CFL.
Can sign bigger deals there. So
what about? Go ahead.
I think that's how you're going to have like a farm league or farm system. I do not think that the NFL could ever have an NFL direct in terms of a farm system like baseball does or any of the other leagues that have them, because the injury factor, it's a high contact sport. The NFL, it stands for not for long, because the average NFL players in the league for like 2.5, 3 years. Most guys don't make it to the end of their rookie contract. So there's just
shaving that shit off.
There's just not enough time frame for you to have. I mean, baseball players, most baseball players spend years in the minor leagues, and then they end up, if they're lucky enough to end up in the major leagues, and then you're able to spend time up there. But baseball, the injuries that you get are not nearly the same kind of injuries that you can get on a football field. So
I agree with you. It just, I don't know. I could just
system is going to be other leagues and college.
And that's fine. If I was a team, I would want to have my own pipeline of players I could build. And like you said, I mean, with NFL Europe and all those different things, like if a 6th-round pick can be drafted over there, I mean, there's probably going to have to be some compensation swap. Let's just say a team, let's say the Berlin Lions take a cornerback from the Chiefs who was going to be a 6th-round pick, and you want to score there. There has to be a compensation. They have to send over $300,000, and they'll do that. I don't know. I could just see if it gets to that point, we have multiple leagues kind of popping around. There's going to have to be money, and exchanges are going to have to go back and forth. Because I'll just tell you now, Brett Veach will not be happy if he gets a guy and he goes to another place and they don't get no compensation return. There has to be something in play. So,
well, that's what the CFL was for a very long time. If everybody remembers, like Doug Flutie and guys like that, they all went from, the CFL to the NFL, and or back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Okay.
And that's what a lot of that
Warner?
was.
Kurt Warner.
Yeah, Kurt
played.
Warner. I mean, which ended up being Hall of Fame.
Warren
You know,
Moon.
Yeah.
In the 90s, Warren Moon is one of the to me is one of the most underrated football players ever. And he, playing with the Oilers, he left and he played Canadian football. He's one of the only players that's in both the CFL and the NFL Hall of Fame.
That's a good point.
Oh, hey, really quick. By the way, I did find a picture of Corey and I wanted to put this up because it's extremely important that people know what he looks like. Let me take us down so people can see my man Corey.
And that's how you get hit with a copyright strike.
Hey, you know what? I don't have that problem. We're lucky. We don't have that issue.
I think that is how. I think that was longer than the fair use argument. So I think you.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get into the copyright strike.
I don't think I will, but we'll see. Anyway.
Yeah, Chiefs Talk on the Rock has a good point. The MLB draft used to be 40 rounds. It's now 20. Can you imagine 40 rounds baseball draft?
Man,
that was way too long.
I mean, that's so many picks. I mean, what was it? It's like Gerard Dyson was like the 39th. It was in like the 39th round. So,
yeah. If you did something of that nature, again, it would have to be like I said, like Quentin said, it's a great example. I mean, the XFL's got a deal with the NFL where their players can swap. They've even got to deal with the coaching staff. So, which is kind of cool. I mean, you got some coaches from the NFL that are actually, in the XFL right now. So, if that works out this time and it actually does play out well, it doesn't go bankrupt, which, I mean, with the money that's involved with just two of the people, Rock and his ex-wife, I don't think it's going to go bankrupt anytime soon. But who knows? I mean, we have an XFL team here. I don't know if anybody knew that. They don't have many games.
St. Louis.
What's that?
The Battlehawks in St. Louis.
Yeah, and then there's one in Las Vegas. There's one in
San Antonio.
Seattle? San Antonio.
Yeah, there's the Seattle Dragons.
Yeah. I think there's like 7 teams.
Yeah, I believe the starting quarterback for the Washington football team from the Washington metropolitan area, Taylor Heineke, I believe, was an XFL quarterback.
Prior to the first downfall? Or the last downfall,
before he joined in the NFL, he was a quarterback in the XFL. I think he was a quarterback in the NFL and then got cut, joined the XFL. Now he's back in the NFL. I think that's how that went. So, I mean, look, there are guys that are going to slip through the cracks, right? Guys that they go undrafted free agents, right? They end up on a practice squad or, get cut, right? Part of the way through the season, join an XFL roster, excel in the XFL, and end up getting signed by an NFL football team again. That's going to happen.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Some of these guys just need a chance to get on a field. Some of these guys, they do better on the field than they do testing in a 40 time or anything like that. So, some guys they don't perform, when they're doing their testing, but you put them on a football field and they no longer have to think, they just do. And they're going to perform better.
Absolutely. And hey, by the way, if anybody ever follows the XFL or if you watch any of these games, check out the running back in Vegas. This guy was working at JCPenney's prior to getting into the XFL. And he is a phenomenal running back. I mean, phenomenal. And he's actually fairly tall, which is kind of amazing to me. I mean, not amazing, I guess, but for his height and the fact that he's as dominant as he is, says a lot. He plays really well, and I think you'll see him in the NFL soon. He's 20. I want to say he's 23 right now, and he's really good. So, if you guys watch any XFL and watch the Vegas team, watch him play because he's pretty good. I'm kind of keeping an eye out on that. So
I could give I don't care about the XFL because I have bad baseball to watch. But I will be interested to see if any of these spring leagues can survive. I do think that the AAF was going to survive the COVID year, but because of COVID, it killed the league off. I do think that they were going to survive. And
I agree.
look, every time one of these spring leagues pops up and plays 6 months or 6 games, 8 games, whatever they end up playing, the NFL always steals something from them that the teams like. I mean, the Sky Camp turned out was an original XFL thing.
Yep.
And then the NFL was like, that's cool. People seem to really like this.
Yeah.
Thank you for that idea. And they end up stealing it. So every time that, one of these things comes up, the NFL usually steals something, which has improved the NFL. I think some of the mic'd up stuff was taken away from the old XFL too. So every time one of these games pops up, these new leagues pop up, the NFL always improves the viewing experience because of that.
Really quick.
That's a good point.
Off topic. I don't know if you guys have watched any. I'm sure there's some MMA guys on the show right now, but did you hear that the MMA and the WWE have merged?
Yes.
I saw that.
And did anyone see Vince McMahon? When they
I don't
did
pay
the
attention
interview.
to that stuff, so
Okay.
I didn't see the interview. I just heard about what was it, like $21 billion?
Yeah. I want everybody that ever watched WWE. Now, when I was a kid, of course, you watched it because it was on. I don't watch it. I don't believe. I think
they
it's
had
all
television
fake
back then.
Yeah, back then, it was black and white, but they had it. Vince McMahon was a buff kind of guy in really good shape. Just had his issues. On off, I guess, camera issues, if you want to call it that. The man went to Wayne Newton, plastic surgeon. I'm telling you, I have never seen somebody that was so distorted looking in an interview than I didn't even think it was him. First of all, Corey and all you guys are making fun of my gray beard. If I dyed my hair and my beard the way he did and made it look the way he did, he'd look like a circus act. And then the plastic surgery is so bad. I mean, he should be on an episode of Botched because it's just horrid. I had to put that out there. But the interview, I mean, the merger of the two is actually kind of genius. If you think about it, you've got guys that have transitioned over from both sides. You've got guys that went from, WWE and started in the MMA and then back and forth. Well, apparently Dana White is the president, but he's no longer the owner of the MMA. It was bought out by another individual or a corporation. Frank Fertitta's brother, Lorenzo, and Dana White were the original guys with the MMA, that started all of this. And then it just kind of blossomed into what it is today. But you've got guys from the NFL that have went and fought MMA. You've got guys in the MMA that have actually come and played in the NFL. And now you're going backwards with this whole thing now with the WWE. What is your thought on this? Do you think it's going to diminish the mindset of the MMA, as far as how we all know that wrestling is, 99% fake? Do we think this is going to diminish any of this? Any of the mindset of people thinking the MMA is going...
NFL's king. Nothing's going to diminish anything. They're going to get everything.
I kind of agree. But I agree with that.
NFL's
I just thought it was something we had to bring up because we are a sports show, and that was, something that did happen. So we might as well bring it up while we got the opportunity. And it does kind of translate to the NFL since some of the players have played in all three areas. I mean, you got to look at it. We've got guys that have left the NFL and went and wrestled. It's weird how that worked out, but it does. What is Corey saying here? He says JSN or Addison.
So it's response to the question by Joe Viscoski. Can you put that on the screen, Joe?
Oh, sure.
He says, which receiver do we trade up for in your guys' opinion? I think by not making a move for a veteran, we have shown our hand. I see that as our move now. So is there a wide receiver you guys think the Chiefs could trade up for?
I
Go ahead, Quentin.
personally, I don't really think that there's a receiver that Kansas City should trade up for because to me, Quentin Johnson is the best, right? In this draft. First of all, he spells his name correctly, so that's already a bump up in my ranking.
There we go.
But two, I think that he's going to get picked before Kansas City, realistically, without giving up a ton of capital, is going to be able to really get up there. Then you've got Jackson and Njigba, Jalen Hyatt, maybe or probably. I mean, Njigba is definitely number 2 to me. But once you get to some of these other guys, to me, they're all kind of the same guy, right? They're a
the
little
ceiling
shorter.
kind of falls off.
Yeah, they're a little shorter. I'm pretty high on Josh Downs from North Carolina, right? That's the guy that I think Kansas City should go after. One, because I think it's realistic, right? I mean, I could lie to you and just say, well, Kansas City should go after Quentin Johnston because he's the best wide receiver, and that's – but I just don't think that's realistic. So, to me, Josh Downs is probably the guy that not only do I think is reasonable, but I think is probably the most talented guy that you're not going to lose everything to go after and grab. So that's probably the person. If Jordan Addison or maybe that guy from Boston,
Zay Flowers.
Yeah, Zay Flowers. Those are definitely guys that I could see sliding in the draft. And if they're either one of those guys are there at 31, I mean, I'll take it, right? I'm not gonna complain about it. My problem is just once you get past really Quentin Johnson and Njigba, the talent level falls off for me.
Everybody, Corey has been really concerned about these drops of Quentin Johnson. Look, that's something that can be fixed. I mean, it's not something that is just a complete detriment. That can be fixed. If he has all the other attributes, and that's the one thing that they have to work on, I'm not so concerned. I think he's a good player. I think he's got a lot. He runs great routes. He's fast, big. He's sizable. What do you have, like 10-inch hands or something crazy like that?
He has big hands.
Big old hands.
Do some things.
I think he could be. I think he could be one of those guys that can come in and make a huge impact with the right coaching staff. That's my opinion. We've seen this numerous times where play. Look, hey man, we can use Sky Morford in a great example. I mean, this is a guy that couldn't field a punt return or a kick return, and he worked on it and he got it, and he was part of the reason why we won the Super Bowl. So when you really look at it from that perspective, you get the right coaching staff or the right particular coach, those type of things can be fixed. If he had other attributes or other detriments, I should say, that would diminish his play or diminish his value, then I would say okay. But it is what it is. Those type of things are going to happen.
The player I think the Chiefs should get is Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. He's very, very fast. He's a very good route runner. Not many people have talked about him. I think he's a guy that Chiefs could get in the second round or maybe in the third. I mean, I watched his highlights against Alabama. He literally tore them up. 6 catches, 5 touchdowns, I think 235 yards. Never seen a wide receiver do something like that before. I know, JP, you're like, huh? He did do that. It is there.
Yeah.
Tennessee, when they upset Alabama, he destroyed them.
He did.
With all these things he did. 6 catches, 5 touchdowns, and over 200 yards receiving. That is someone the Chiefs could use in the offense. He's very, very fast. He kind of me a little bit of a guy named Chef Schwartz from Auburn a couple years ago, but he's a better route runner. And if you can he did really well with Hendon Hooker before he tore his ACL. But if you can put him with a Patrick Mahomes that has a stronger arm and is not as athletic, but can move around, he's going to be very, very helpful. And I think that's the wide receiver the Chiefs should go after. Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee.
Okay. Well, Joe says we need to. I'm assuming this means move up in the draft and get a wide receiver. In his opinion, look. You know what? I don't know if that's a necessary. I think we're still a little early to be talking about not being able to pick up a veteran wide receiver because there's still time. So that I'm not really too concerned with.
If Hopkins gets cut, he ends up here in Kansas City.
I absolutely agree.
That's
with
the
that.
hope.
That's and look, and here's another one that well, I'm not going to say it, but there's another wide receiver, a veteran wide receiver right now that the Chiefs have their eye on, and they're biding their time and looking at numbers, and Veach doing his accounting thing.
I think I know who you're talking about.
And you know exactly who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he will. I think that might be a very viable option.
I need to respond back to this point. Corey, I don't think he'd be a gadget player. I think he could be McCole Hardman, but better. You just don't put over 200 yards on Alabama.
No,
what he did
no, you don't.
All that season, not just that game, he had some great stretches. Now, could you use him in maybe the screen game, maybe the jump pass or whatever, the jump pass or jet sweeps? Yeah, but I think he could become a very good wide receiver and exceed expectations than what McCole Hardman did.
Remember, everybody thought Tyreek was a gadget player.
I just feel like what he has, it could benefit. And not many people are talking about him. He very well could be maybe someone gets taken the first round, but I think he could possibly fall to the Chiefs.
Okay, he just said, watch his tape close. He has no hip flexibility. Well, they said the same thing about McCole.
Well, the thing is that, Alabama, I guess he's saying they had terrible defense. Well, yeah, they did. I would say that. But, regardless, at the end of the day, he played up very, really, really good numbers. So, I just think he could do very, very well for the most part there.
And here's the thing. When you're looking at a player from college, you have to look at the team that they may end up with. You can't always base it. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
He put over almost 1,300 yards receiving, 18.9 yards per catch, 15 touchdowns, as long as 78.
That's strong.
Catch. That's pretty good in the SEC, where defenses are kind of keen. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I look at it like, players, again, it's always about system. And it's always about what team drafts who. And in my opinion, we have a great coaching staff. And if anybody and a great quarterback that can make anybody better. So when you're in that position, it's a little different than if you said, okay, well, we're going to bring him to San Francisco and we got Brock Purdy that's going to help him out. Or, a team that just doesn't have a great wide receiver coach or a great offensive-minded coach that doesn't work with their players. But we don't have that problem. We've made bad wide receivers or mediocre wide receivers look very good, especially since 2018. So I'm not real concerned with what somebody has done in college unless it's just been absolutely horrid, which he wasn't. I'm more concerned with fitment within the system and being able to play within a spread offense and not want to be that number one guy. We get that, we're golden. It's already been proven. Mahomes can take anybody and win a Super Bowl. Can anybody here deny that? Because he absolutely just took a complete group of new wide receivers, with the exception of Travis Kelce, because McCole Hardman was off the field for the most of the season, and won a Super Bowl with them. And he put up, 40, what was it? How many touchdowns was it? 43?
And he has the most he has the most total yards.
Yards in a season.
Look, as long as you have Travis Kelce, then you're gonna have that. I'm okay with it, right? You don't need a number one wide receiver because your tight end at this point is your number one wide receiver. So that's where I stand on that.
Hold on a minute. Go ahead, Quentin. I'm just gonna give I'm giving Reset the Taco Bell bong because what he said is exactly right.
That's why I think he brought up offensive line, defensive line. That's where I think they should go round one. I am both jokingly and because I actually do think that DeJuan Jones is the pick at 31.
Absolutely.
Right. If you think that you have your left tackle with the free agent signing that you have, go get your right tackle of the future. We've talked about him a lot, but if there's not there, the guy from K-State, he's grown on me. The more and more I've looked at what he's done. If the Chiefs end up with 2 K-State players, I would be very happy with both of the guys that I think that they should go after. And I think it's reasonable for that guy from K-State to slide and end up at 31. I think you just have to go after it, because if you look at this roster, those are the two of the weaker points, right? I know who our wide receivers are going to be heading into the NFL season. Even if you aren't necessarily happy with them, you know who they're going to be. I don't know who our right tackle is. That worries me. And the defensive line, you lost a lot of snaps over the offseason.
You did.
You need to replace those snaps. You need to place quality snaps on the defensive edge position from Frank Clark. So even though I think Karlaftis is going to step up, he's going to be better, he's not going to be able to play 100% of the downs. And you need to be prepared for injury at all of these positions.
Absolutely.
And you need to be able to fill those spots. And that's what I think. So off the offensive line and defensive line is where I'm going to go. I have a feeling it's going to be defensive line, just because there's going to be a lot taken in the first round. And that's where I think they're going to go. And so the guy from K-State, I don't even want to attempt to pronounce his name. Someone's going to have to tell me how to say it like 7 times.
It's just Felix.
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever.
Okay,
you could have said anything, and I'd have been like, that's fine. I'm going to call him Felix.
That's his first name. It's just his middle and last is difficult.
Yeah, so Felix, I think, is a real chance for him to slide. He's not a perfect prospect, and at 31, you're not getting a perfect prospect. So that's who I think is going to get. It's got to be one of those two, Felix or DeJuan Jones.
Well, if anybody wants to know anything about Frank Clark, it sounds like the Seattle Seahawks are going back after him, and they may end up picking him back up. If that happens, I'm happy for him. I really am. I want him to sign. I'd rather him come back to Kansas City, but if he gets signed by the Seahawks, okay. I mean, I'm not going to be upset about it. He's a great player, a great person. I didn't think they had that great of a separation at the time, but
I mean,
again,
it has been 4 years.
Yeah, it's been a while, so I don't think that's really going to really affect anything. I think if he gets picked back up and he goes there, hey, that's fine. I'd like to have his veteran presence back on the field, but I like Frank Clark. I mean, I really like Frank Clark, so I like him as a person and I like him as a player. So it's difficult to see him go somewhere else. And that's the problem in the NFL, especially when you're a fan, is you get attached to some of these guys. You know, we've gotten attached, like we got attached to Charkandrick West. I mean, still love Charkandrick to this day. What a great guy. I mean, it's just one of those people that you like. You can't not like him. It's just hard, but it is what it is. What's Joe saying here? If the draft wasn't in KC this year, we would trade out of the round. I actually kind of agree with that. Given the fact that, you know, it is and Reset says there are so many options out there. It's true. In this draft, there is a ton of options out there. And even in some free agency areas, there's a lot of options. But, you know, given the fact that this is a precedented time in Kansas City with the draft, Veach is going to make the most of it. Now, will he sacrifice to get the player he wants because it's in Kansas City? Absolutely he will. I don't believe Veach is going to say, well, I'm going to, you know, not jump up in the draft or not do what I have to do because it's in Kansas City. He, of course, I mean, look, it's drawing enough attention as it is. It's right now you got the best GM as far as a drafting GM has proven himself 3 years straight out of anybody in the NFL. So it just bolsters it as the fact that it's in Kansas City. That's just, you know, so I think he's going to do what he has to do to make this team special again and again and again and again. And like Quentin's alluded to numerous times, we got Patrick Mahomes.
End of argument.
End of argument. What more do you need?
I mean, when you have a quarterback that can do everything, elevate the guys. Look, let's be honest. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is in his prime. I think he's at the beginning of his prime, right, guys? Quarterbacks don't enter their prime, quote unquote, until their late 20s, early 30s. It's a lot like offensive linemen, right? Where offensive linemen don't turn into their best self until they hit the beginning of that second contract. So very similar with quarterbacks. So, you know, you don't have to surround him with God tier talent because he's going to elevate the guys that are already around him. So I'm not going to spend an exorbitant amount of money, a lot of resources trading up in drafts or, signing a guy to a $30 million a year contract when I know that, man, the first time my quarterback was starting, we lost our chance to go to another Super Bowl, the first Super Bowl for him, because the defense just simply let him down. So let me invest a little bit inside my defense. Let me build the Great Wall of China around him to defend him. Let me build this unstoppable brick force around him to where nobody's going to be able to get around it. And that's where I'm going to spend a lot of my resources, because I know that average to above average athletes on the outside between my quarterback and my head coach, we can work with that.
Yeah.
I can't really work with a bad offensive line and a bad defense.
That's true. That is true.
Corey seems to think that there's going to be 5 or 6 wide receivers going the first round. I can't see that because there's not that many good wide receivers in the league.
I think
there's
a ton of them. I think a ton of them are going to go middle second.
Yeah,
that's where we're going to see it. I think we're going to see a run of wide receivers go in the middle of the second round, because I swear all of them are carbon copies of themselves. They just have different names.
I agree.
They're all like 5'11" and a $190.
Yep.
There's so much talent. There's so little. I mean, I can't say there's so much talent.
There's a lot of B talent. There's
a lot of B talent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's no like blue chip guy. There's no like, wow, this is the next guy. This is the next Randy Moss. This is the next.
Yeah. There's no DK Metcalf. There's no. There's none of those guys in this draft. So
there's a lot of just, man, I think you could be a good wide receiver. There's a lot of B plus talent, and so there's going to be a run of them in the second and third rounds.
Exactly.
And let me ask you guys a question. Given the fact that the two kind of polar opposites. Given the fact that there's not a whole lot of talent wide receiver wise in this draft, you would almost seem to think that the wide receiver market would be a little bit higher in the NFL right now as far as veteran players or who's in the league right now, trades, contracts, all that. But it seems to be the contract, the market for a wide receiver right now is the lowest I've seen it in 6 years. And there's really not a lot of talent coming out of the draft. So you would assume that whatever wide receivers that are in the league right now that a team may want or need would bring a higher market value. But they're just not doing that. I mean, you got OBJ that wants $15 million a year. Nobody's going to give him that. I mean, there may be somebody that does. It could. I mean, there's dumbass teams out there like the Raiders. They would do something stupid like that. But for the most part, most intelligent people, intelligent owners and GMs and coaches wouldn't do that right now, given the fact of his injuries, issues. And there's so many other wide receivers out there that you can go and pick up. There's a lot of receivers that are going to be hitting the street again here right during the draft and after the draft.
Yep. And
then you got the 4th round of free agency that you're going to see guys out in the street. So I don't know. It's just, what do you think of that? What do you think? Wouldn't you think the market would be higher for veteran wide receivers right now, or even guys that have been in the league 1-2 years?
Last year, that was the reason. I mean, last year it was high because of all that, and then it's dropped because of their talents are not really there. Now we're going to see resurgence probably next 2-3 years. But anytime you have a good receiver class come out and they do very well, that's when we see those huge peaks. And then there's going to be some drops because the receiver class after that, after most of those 1-year rental guys or those 2-year for 14 years with a 3rd-year player option, things like that. So I don't know. I just believe at this time, since what we saw at Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, all those guys, that was the rise. And now we're in the decline where teams are just going to get off for 1-year, 2-year deals.
Okay, anybody on the show right now want to take this bet?
I mean, I'd bet him a beer, but here's what I'll say
it
about
depends
the
on what
wide
there's
receiver
some $20 beers out there.
Yeah, I'm too poor to bet $20. Here's what I'll say about the wide receiver room, and this will be the last thing that I mention. I think that the fact that Juju Smith-Schuster got $11 million a year, says everything that you need to know. That there is a supply and demand, and I think that the fact that there are a ton of these organizations that believe exactly what we're saying. That there's a lot of upper mid-tier talent coming out of the draft. And so, yeah, Juju Smith-Schuster is just a little bit better than the guys that are coming out of the draft because he has veteran experience. And so I don't need a lot of these teams. I don't need to go out and spend a lot of money in free agency at the wide receiver position when I can get a guy significantly cheaper that in possibly 6 months can pretty much do everything that a guy like Juju can. So why go out and spend a ton of money, especially when you're a team like a Buffalo or some of these other teams that are already pretty close to the cap and have draft picks? So if I have a second, third round pick, I can go get a Juju Smith-Schuster-ish kind of guy. And of course it's a gamble, but we're in a hard cap league. So that's worth the gamble to me. And I think that's where Kansas City sits.
That's fair.
Here's what Brissett thinks. He says, and he's another Taco Bell ding. Mahomes is in control of that offense. If he's the decision makers, so he's saying, go get me that number one, they'll go out and get him. But, and they do make smart moves. And the one thing I will say, Brissett, is they made that mistake once in a draft, I should say. And we all know how that turned out. And that was an endorsement from Mahomes to a degree. But, and also, again, I think people are not really looking at what team he played for and the historic offensive line that he had, but Clyde was a mistake. I mean, you don't go out and pick up a running back in the first round. It's just a mistake.
We'll talk about that next week when we talk about that draft.
So I think
come on back next week.
Yeah, definitely do that. What Joe said, rookie receivers struggle in Reed's system. I don't know, Joe. I mean, they have really stepped up lately. I mean, you look at what Sky Moore has done. He struggled in the, I guess, the punt return game, but he always came back with a phenomenal catch while he's on the field, in a wide receiver role. What's your guys' opinion on that? On Joe's comment?
It depends on what you mean by struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how many guys have come into Reed's system and had 1,000 yards as a rookie? Okay, 2 guys, Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin. Okay, but are there guys that come in and produce? Yeah, there are plenty of guys that have come in and been 500-yard wide receivers. I think sometimes we just overblow expectations for guys coming into the league. So
exactly,
if you say that a rookie wide receiver has to come in and be the number one guy, has to be 1,000 yards, then most guys are going to come in and struggle. But if your expectation is, he's going to come in and he's going to get 30 catches and he's going to have 500 yards and possibly ends up being a specialist returner, then I would say there are plenty of guys all throughout the system that have come in and been successful. So I think it's just what you think that guys should come in and do.
What do you, Caleb, and you? I think you might agree with me on this. We've seen the transition over the years. We talked about this at the beginning, a few years ago with the beginning, I guess, of Reed's kind of regime into the 17-18 season, that it was a struggle for wide receivers to come in and learn the playbook. But what Reed has done, and it's a kind of a transition thing, and I really like the way he's done this, is that a lot of that had to do with Patrick Mahomes because of the way he played the game. But now that Patrick's kind of transitioned himself into a well-rounded quarterback that can play, in the pocket, out of the pocket, RPOs, dump off passes, whittle his way down the field very smoothly, I guess I should say, instead of the 60-yard bombs. Reed has kind of tailored his playbook for some of these rookies to succeed quickly. And we've noticed that over the last couple of years. Prior to that, it was difficult, but I think it's changed a lot. I mean, I think Reed's changed. Look, Reed changes with the times. I mean, what do you think, Caleb?
I agree. I think what he's done is he's made it to where that rookie's been very, very successful. They're not having these down years. They're actually being fairly consistent. And Sky Moore has done some things that we saw finally in the playoffs. It kind of overtook. But Cole Hardman has done some things where it's benefited overtaken from what we've seen. So all the different guys have taken, I think it's been beneficial what Andy has done altering the playbook. And if they can get these other guys, like a Jalen Hylett, if they somehow get a Quentin Johnson, they'll be even better than what they have. And I think they'll be at an opportunity where it'll work out. So
I agree. Well, I don't know what more we have to talk about. And we went through the draft. We went through what we think, or through the 18 draft, I should say. I have a feeling that something may happen player-wise between now and next Tuesday, Wednesday. Just kind of things that I've been little birdies tweeting in my ear. We'll see if that actually happens. But I am hearing that, and Rissett's right. He was elite in his first season. Hardman was, and that was, there was a lot of reasons behind that. But he had a great first year. But I think there's going to be. Yeah, thank you, Joe. You have a great Easter as well, buddy.
thank you.
Joe's an awesome dude. But
Joe
yeah.
Mama.
Oh,
Got him.
Oh, zinger. But I think we may see something happen in the next 4 or 5 days. If this goes down, I'll be pretty happy if it does. He said, I'm starting to wonder about a CJ extension. Don't wonder about that.
It's going to happen after the draft.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen after the draft. Just don't even consider it. It's done. Real quick, tomorrow, 11, I guess it would be 11 a.m. Central Time. Make sure everyone has their YouTube notifications on. Whatever you do, turn your notifications on. We got a video dropping tomorrow. Get a box of tissues and just sit down, whether you're at work or wherever you're at, and make sure that you're ready for this video. It is dropping at 11 a.m. CT. So make sure you're ready for this. It will be on our YouTube channel, and I think you guys are going to love it. With that being said, we will talk to you guys again on Tuesday. We appreciate everybody for joining, and don't forget about tomorrow. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You guys will tear up a little bit. I did. So we'll talk to you guys then. Peace out, everybody.